Hey crew, so I didn't realize we could hit such crazy damage numbers with a Stasis Glaive build. We just poked Carl over here with our Glaive twice, doing over 144k per hit. That's an insane number given that our Glaive damage at base is only around 11k per hit. Even on the Solar or Void Glaive setups, we could only get to about 82k damage, so this is doing 62k more damage when we get the whole build going. But once again, when dealing with high health targets or champions, we need to stay alive or it's all pointless, so doing that insane damage really doesn't mean that much if we can't keep ourselves alive. Another really cool thing to the Stasis Titan with Synthoceps as well is that any crystals created by our Howl of the Storm melee or our Behemoth Super gets the 200% damage buff when shattering them, as long as we have our Synthos Procd, which is normally all the time. So as you can see on Carl, 2 uppercuts almost kill him. That means we're probably doing around 100k damage with our Stasis melee, which means it will one-shot any red bars for sure in difficult content. So that allows us to use a bunch of well mods, because when those Stasis crystals blow up and kill something, it will proc melee well maker and explosive well maker. So we're going to be creating a bunch of Stasis wells and solar wells to help with ability regen, but the more important thing it does is give us some more survivability and healing with the overall build. We can also loop this powerful melee because we will always have one up thanks to our subclass and mod selection, and I want to stress how important this melee uppercut is. Kind of like the super strong melee build we did with the Solar Titan and Consecration Slam, if you guys remember that. But what this uppercut Howl of the Storm is doing for us is a ton of different things. It provides so much for the build, and we have an infinite amount of them, so that's really awesome. It provides getting our Dust Field Grenade back in seconds thanks to a fragment. It provides damage reduction by creating crystals and freezing targets. It provides huge ability regen on top of huge damage output on its own. And then it provides healing as well from the stasis crystals and the solar wells and even stasis overshields. So it's safe to say it's the workhorse of this build for sure, and you want to use it to clear waves of enemies and lead into engagements. Then when you see that high health target, maybe a champion or a boss, you throw that dust field to lock them up. Then go to town with your Glaive and Synthos and the freezing aspect of the dust fields to get those big damage numbers. Me and Rob 2-man the 1610 Master Nightfall with this build, and you will see a lot of the time that we don't even have max damage on our Glaive attacks, but it doesn't really matter because we're doing enough damage with the freezing and Synthos, and we're doing that damage quick enough, and then we have a good old stasis to just keep everything frozen and locked up as we Glaive it all down. Needless to say, after using Glaives on my Solar, Void, and Stasis Titan, I have a newfound love for just Glaving things if it can be Glaved, and it's a lot more fun than I thought it would be. I think the next video is going to be a Warlock Void one. I did a Warlock Arc one last season that's still really good, but we're going to check out the Void Lock next. If you would like to support the channel extra by being a channel member and getting some extra perks, then make sure to click the link in the pinned comment and join up. If you choose to do so, then thank you. I really appreciate the extra support. So make sure to pay attention to the subclass and mods because it makes a huge difference when set up right in survivability and ability regen. Now for our Stasis subclass, the grenade you want to be using is the Dust Field Grenade. The reason for this is because it creates that dome, it slows and freezes targets, and we want to freeze a target over and over if we can. Every time you Glaive a frozen target, you get a damage multiplier every time that target is frozen and you hit it with a Glaive. I'm not sure on the exact numbers on this, but I think it's a 2x multiplier from the testing that I was doing. But with the shatter damage going off as well from the Glaive, I'm not sure if that's exactly correct. So if someone else knows, leave that in the comments down below to help people out. But the Dust Field Grenades just works better than Glacier or our Cold Snap Grenade because it can freeze targets 2 or 3 times to hit those big numbers of damage. For the 2 aspects, we're going with Howl of the Storm. While sliding, activate your charged melee ability to launch a wave of stasis energy forward that freezes targets and creates stasis crystals. Now this is going to do awesome damage with Synthoceps, but it also provides the stasis crystals we need with this build. And then we're going to go with Tectonic Harvest. Shattering a stasis crystal creates stasis shards. These shards grant melee energy when picked up by you or your allies. Next, we're going to add Whisper of Rhyme. Collecting a stasis shard grants a small amount of overshield, which falls off after 10 seconds. Collecting more adds to that overshield and refreshes the timer. But if you're low on health, these stasis shard also heal you. So now, just by collecting shards from our Howl of the Storm melee, we are getting melee energy, we are getting healing if we're under max health, and then we're also getting overshield if we're above max health. So those shards are doing a lot for us. And then we're going to add Whisper of Hunger, increase the melee energy gained from picking up stasis shards. So now when you melee and use Howl of the Storm and break those crystals, when you pick up those stasis shards, you're going to get about 75 to 80% of your melee back instantly by picking up the shards. Then our well mods are going to come into play and give us the rest of it what we need. Now for our third fragment, we're going with Whisper of Chains. While you are near frozen targets or friendly stasis crystals, you take reduced damage from targets. So again, Howl of the Storm procs this along with our Dust Field Grenades. hits. And then lastly, we have Whisper of Shards. Shattering a stasis crystal temporarily boosts your grenade recharge rate. Shattering additional stasis crystals increases the benefit. This is gonna get our dust field back literally in like 5 to 8 seconds. And again, we shatter the stasis crystals from our melee. That's why our melee is such a workhorse in this build. Now in the gameplay you're watching, I was running 100 resilience and 100 discipline, and then your third stack can go into whatever you want. I would prefer strength. Just in case your melee does not kill something, that means you need to make up that last 20% of your melee just with ability regen. Now for your weapons on the build, again, we're using Judgment of Kel'Garath just to get that close to melee, and we're getting that 30% extra damage because of that perk. But in a lot of the gameplay you see here, I wasn't even proccing close to melee before unloading on a champion or glaving down a boss or something, so technically you could probably trade this out if you wanted to, but if you want to hit that max damage threshold, you would want to get close to melee, kill something with your solar projectile on it, and then proc that 30% damage buff. In my primary, I was using Disparity, and that's because of the Hake Breach armaments. It allows you to one-shot the crystals. Then in my heavy, I was using Anarchy just to hit those unstoppables. For our exotic of choice, of course, that's Synthoceps. It buffs our melee range, and being surrounded buffs our damage. That's a 200% damage buff, and that's also buffing our Glaive attack. It's buffing our stasis crystals from our melee, and it's buffing our stasis crystals from our Behemoth Super melee. And we've already went over Synthoceps in the last 2 Glaive videos. Now for mods on the build, we're going with Well mods, which is a little different on a stasis build. So on our helmet, we're going with Melee Well Maker, so every time that those crystals shatter and kill something, we'll create a well. On our gauntlets, I have Well of Life, so every time I pick up a solar well, I'll get that 13% HP over every second healing for 10 seconds. That's just extra healing to the build, because the one thing I think this stasis build does suffer in is survivability. The Void build that we did the other day, I think is still better if you want survivability and still get great damage. Yes, with stasis you get more damage, but I think you have better survivability with the Void build in my personal opinion. On our chest piece we have another melee well maker, so now we have 2 melee well makers. On our boots we have explosive well maker, because when you shatter those stasis crystals and get a double kill, which is very easy to do because of the Synthoceps extra damage on them, when stasis explodes it's considered explosive damage. So the first kill will spawn the stasis wells and the second kill will spawn these solar wells. And then on our class item we have bountiful wells, so now the melee well maker, we're going to spawn 3 stasis wells because we have 2 of those on, and then we're also going to spawn 2 solar wells because we have explosive well maker on. From the artifact we have the Lord Kelvin's Basilisk on, just to stun overload champions with that dust field grenade. It's really nice. Stick the dust field on a barrier champion, an overload champion, or an unstoppable champion, and you just go to town with your glaive. We also had passive aggressive guard on to receive less damage from combatants that are close to you while you are wielding a glaive. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. Between the 3 glaive builds we have done, Solar, Void, and Stasis, I would say the Void build is still my favorite and the best one because it provides damage and survivability and healing. And you can go a lot of different routes with the mods on that build. Whereas Stasis, we need to make sure we have Well of Life on to heal, and you need to make sure you're picking up your stasis crystals for healing. It does do more damage technically, but it is less survivability in my personal opinion, so I still, if I had to choose one of the 3, I'm going with the Void one. That's just my personal opinion on it though. You take it whichever way you want. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.